All right, so today we're diving into something that affects every single one of us,
Right.
really. I mean, it's something we think about constantly, right? Our jobs. It's easy to fall into this trap of thinking about work as this, kind of unchanging thing. But the reality is, when you zoom out and look at history, it's been anything but static.
Yeah.
Like, get this. Back in the 1800s,
Yeah.
a whopping 84% of the entire global workforce was in farming.
Yeah. And that shift, just to put it in perspective for you, was massive. I mean, we went from a world dominated by agriculture to the Industrial Revolution with factories popping up everywhere and people migrating to cities. It wasn't just about how people worked. It was a complete reshaping of society, family structures, you name it, a total upheaval.
Absolutely. And in a way, we're in the middle of another one of those huge shifts right now, what a lot of people call the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And it's not just about robots taking over, It's this convergence of AI advancing like crazy, climate change basically forcing every industry to rethink what they do, and this whole redefinition of what even counts as a workplace these days. And the thing is, this isn't some far-off future we're talking about. This is impacting you, like, right now. It's changing the career paths that are available, the skills you need to stay relevant, and even potentially where you do your job.
And the speed at which all this is happening is just, it's remarkable, isn't it? I mean, think about this stat for a second. By 2025, something like 50% of all employees will need reskilling. That's practically right around the corner. So, for our listeners, it's a real wake-up call to start thinking about how these changes are going to affect them personally and to be proactive about adapting.
Definitely. It really highlights a need to, like, future-proof yourself. It's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
It's not just jobs vanishing left and right. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. The World Economic Forum, they project that, automation might displace something like 85 million jobs by 2030. But at the same time, get this, they predict that a staggering 97 million new jobs will be created. That's actually a net gain in employment.
But that raises a huge question for everyone out there, doesn't it? What will these new jobs actually look like? What we're seeing is a move away from, those repetitive kind of mundane tasks towards roles that really tap into those unique human capabilities. Think like complex problem solving, emotional intelligence, those sorts of things. It's less about, machines totally taking over and more about humans and AI working together, almost like partners.
That's it, that idea of humans and AI as a team, right? So some traditional jobs might fade away, but there's a real opportunity for totally new fields and specialized roles to pop up.
The key, though, and this is what I keep coming back to for our listeners, is that you have to be adaptable. These new opportunities won't just fall into your lap, You have to be ready to evolve your skills, to be constantly learning.
Exactly. And it's not just about, like, picking up the latest technical skills, although that's definitely part of it. It's about cultivating this mindset of always being willing to learn, of embracing change as the new normal. Maybe even, and this is a big one, reconsidering how we even define work in the first place.
Okay, so let's kind of zoom out and look at the big picture here for everyone listening, right? What we're seeing is this web of interconnected forces. You've got AI just exploding in terms of capability, this huge shift towards remote work, the gig economy growing every year, and of course, this urgent need to deal with climate change. These are all massive trends that are reshaping the world of work. And it's that interconnectedness that's key, I think. For you listening out there, these aren't separate, isolated trends. They're all feeding into each other. Like, remote work wouldn't be possible without AI-powered communication tools. And the gig economy is, like, perfectly suited for those emerging green industries that need specialized talent. It's all connected.
Right. And it's not just about the economics of it all either. I mean, one of the sources we looked at made this really interesting point, and I think a lot of people can relate to this. Historically, work has been so tied to our identity, right? When you meet someone new, one of the first questions is, what do you do? It's how we define ourselves and each other.
I mean, that connection between what we do and who we are, it's so deeply ingrained in our society. So, as work becomes more fluid, which it is, you might have multiple gigs at once, you might switch careers more often. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How do we define ourselves when what we do is constantly changing?
Yeah. It's a question we all have to grapple with, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this whole other layer, right? The whole concept of where we work has been totally upended. With remote work, especially after, everything that's happened recently. It's clear that a physical office isn't always necessary. I mean, look at companies like Spotify and Salesforce. They're going all in on this digital-first model.
Yeah, but it's not without its trade-offs, is it? I mean, on the one hand, you have all this flexibility, you can work from anywhere, set your own hours, all that. But what we're seeing is, and this is something for you to think about, is that you might lose out on some of those, those spontaneous interactions that happen in an office, those water cooler chats, the chance encounters that lead to new ideas.
Exactly. It's not as simple as just like being able to work in your pajamas,
Yeah.
right? There are
Yeah.
pros and cons for sure. And honestly, a lot of companies are still trying to figure out what the best balance is.
Yeah.
Remote, in office, hybrid. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. And then you have this whole other piece of the puzzle, right? The gig economy. It's huge now. I mean, in the US alone, something like 36% of workers are freelancing. And a lot of people are drawn to it because of the independence, You're your own boss, you set your own schedule.
Right. That autonomy is a big selling point.
Yeah.
But, and the research definitely highlights this, there are some real downsides too. Like, what about benefits? Things like health insurance, paid time off, that sort of thing. And the income can be, well, unpredictable, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all project-based. It's not surprising that we're seeing more and more movements pushing for better rights and protections for gig workers.
And that's a huge question for the future, isn't it? How do we adapt our social safety net, things like worker protections, to this new world of work where traditional employment isn't the only model anymore?
It's definitely something we need to figure out. And then there's this other, well, this giant elephant in the room that we have to talk about, climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't just an environmental issue. It's like reshaping industries from the ground up. With so many companies committing to these net zero emissions targets, we're seeing a whole new category of green jobs emerge.
Yeah. And one of the things that really jumped out at me from the research, and this is something I think will resonate with a lot of our listeners, is that this idea of being planet savvy, of understanding sustainability, it's not just for environmentalists anymore. It's becoming a must-have skill across all sorts of fields, whether you're in finance, manufacturing, even marketing. Understanding how your work impacts the environment is becoming essential.
It's like the very definition of work is being stretched in all these different directions at once, and yet all these forces are connected. AI is changing how we do work. Remote work is changing where we do it. The gig economy is changing how we engage with work. And climate change is changing what work even needs to be done.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex picture. And for you out there, it might feel a little overwhelming at times, right? But the thing is, and this is what I think is really important to remember, within all this disruption, there's also a lot of opportunity. But you have to be willing to adapt, to embrace new ways of working and thinking.
So for everyone listening, think about everything we've talked about today. We've covered a lot of ground: AI, remote work, the gig economy, climate change, and how all of this is challenging us to redefine how we think about work and even who we are as workers. It's a lot to take in, right? But it brings up this really fascinating question, doesn't it? Knowing all of this, what single skill or mindset do you think will be most valuable as we navigate this constantly evolving world of work? It's something to think about for sure.